So good afternoon, everybody, and you're very, very welcome to Webinar Wednesday for this Wednesday, the 2nd of November. November is always an exciting month here at Sight and Sound Technology because, of course, we're celebrating another major release in the Vispero calendar with the launch last week of JAWS Zoomtext and Fusion 2023. We're very excited about this. I know a lot of our customers are very excited, and I know based on the amount of feedback we got to today's webinar and the registrations, a lot of people who are here today are very excited as well. So my name is Stuart Lawler. I'm the head of digital content here at Sight and Sound Technology. Delighted to be joined today by some of my own colleagues, Sharon Lyons from our Sight and Sound Technology Dublin office, and Carl Brayley, of course, we're delighted to have Carl back again because he hasn't been with us on Webinar Wednesday for a while, from our Northampton office in our inbound sales manager. And Carl will be chatting in a couple of minutes about some pricing and about how you can get hold of some of the software upgrades, or if you want to get an SMA, or maybe you want to purchase outright, or there's any queries you have on pricing. Carl has come along today, so thank you, Carl. We're also joined today by Ryan Jones from Vispero. Ryan is normally based in the US, but he's actually in the Netherlands today. So Ryan, you're very welcome. We also have Roxana Fischer, and we have Jan Bloem, a good friend of mine and a good friend of ours at Sight and Sound. Great to have Jan with us as well. If you'd like to get involved in the session today and chat to us, or indeed ask questions, you can do so by using chat, and we have confirmed already that chat is working. Many of you have said hello already. You can press Alt and H to chat, or activate the chat button if you're joining us on a mobile device. If you'd like to raise your hand, you can press Alt and Y, or you can activate the raise hand button, which is inside the More Options area if you're on a mobile device. And we will pause for questions as we go along. We are on a very tight schedule because we do need to finish this within the hour because Ryan and his colleagues have other meetings to attend. So we're very grateful for Ryan and the team's time here today, but we do need to finish this by 3 p.m. So we will be asking you to keep your questions. If you do want to speak and raise your hand, we will be asking you to keep your questions as brief as you can so that everybody gets to ask their question. With all that said, let's hand over to Ryan and his colleagues in the Netherlands to tell us all about latest features in JAWS Zoomtext and Fusion 2023. Ryan, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Stuart, and good afternoon, everyone. It's kind of nice to do this webinar because it's not early in the morning for me since I'm over in the Netherlands. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 1500 here. So it's actually later than the UK, which normally I'm 5 or 6 hours earlier. So this is a good treat for me today. Just really, really brief introduction of myself. As everyone knows, that as Eric Damery retired at the beginning of August, then we've had transitions in the software group at Freedom Scientific / Vispero. And so I've stepped in to run the software business. I've been a part of Vispero and Freedom Scientific since the early 2000s. I personally am a JAWS user. Was low vision growing up and have used JAWS now for over 20 years. I live in the US, obviously. And so as I've stepped into this role, I used to do training for quite a number of years and then worked in our enterprise accessibility team, and now I'm leading this team. And so our team includes all the development of JAWS, Zoomtext, and Fusion. My team also includes our US-based technical support team and our training team and our documentation team, all based out of different US locations. And so it's a wonderful group. And also joining me today is Roxana Fischer. Roxana is now the product manager for blinded low vision software. So her role is product management for JAWS, Zoomtext, and Fusion. So the way we kind of work together is my role is setting the overall strategy for what we're doing and guiding the direction of everything. And Roxana is really helping work with our direct engineering teams to work on how we prioritize the work. The things that we can do with our software is obviously endless if we have endless amount of resources, which in the reality is we don't. And so we have to prioritize things and work on what are the most important things to work on and the timing of those things, whether it's features or whether it's fixing issues that we find. And so Roxana is in charge of that effort and leading the way. So with that, we'll kind of get into things, but I want to at least set the stage that we do want to hear from people. We want to hear from all of you what your needs are. If you have ideas about features we could add or things that we could do in JAWS, Zoomtext, or Fusion that you would like to share with us, I encourage you to do it. I can't promise we'll do everything that everyone suggests, but I can promise that we will read it and we will think about it, discuss it, and see what the possibilities are. And the email address where you can reach us very easily is software suggestions, all one word, software suggestions @vispero.com. If you email that address, Roxanne and I will both see it and be able to take your suggestion. So open for anyone to do that. So as Stuart said, we've released JAWS, Zoomtext, and Fusion 2023 back on early last week, and we'll highlight some of the new features that are in. But I want to generally point out that with a new release, not only do we have new features, but there's literally hundreds of bug fixes that are made in that new release and tweaks to things that are changing. And so, as all of you know, the landscape that we live in with software now is that it's changing all the time. I mean, every couple of weeks, if you use Chrome or Edge, your browser's updating. For anyone who uses Office 365, Outlook, or Teams, programs like that, they're changing almost weekly, and if not weekly, then monthly. So we're always in a constant state of working to keep up with those changes and make sure that our products are working with the latest things that the larger companies like Microsoft and Google are doing. So we don't outline every single thing that we do. We would have a list a mile long of changes that we're making, but we generally try to find the most impactful things that we try to communicate. And as we're in a world now where we can push out software updates on a much more rapid basis, we don't have to ship CDs or DVDs or ship, way old days, 3.5-inch floppy disks anymore. You know, when we have an update, we can tell you about it through the product, and you can download it and install it. It means that we can push updates in a much more frequent manner, which we've done over the last few years. And it also means that we can actually push out features at different times throughout the year. So we don't have to follow the model of all the new features come in the original release. So 2023, 2024, and so on. We'll always have new features coming out at that point, but there will be things that will come out later in the year. A good example of that is the notifications center that was released in the June update of 2022 products. And we'll talk about some new things that happened in that today. So what you hear from us today is not the only things that you will get within 2023. In fact, there's a really cool feature that we're working on that I think will be out next spring sometime that I can't wait to come back and share with you about. So there's things that'll come out through the rest of the year, as well as the typical bug fixes. The first thing I want to share about with JAWS is a new feature called Smart Glance. And the point of Smart Glance is that sometimes web page developers, this is a feature related to web and or PDF files, sometimes developers are doing things that they want visually to stand out. So they're making text bolded, or maybe they change the color or the font style because they want it visually to stand out. And someone who can see the screen can just visually glance around the screen, and their eye will be caught by these things that stand out visually. Sometimes those things are tagged as headings or regions or other things that we can find easily in JAWS, and sometimes they're not. And it could be that the website's not very accessible, or it could just be that the text that they want visually to stand out doesn't really need to be a heading. And so Smart Glance allows us as JAWS users to quickly find those things that visually stand out, but aren't necessarily tagged as a heading or a region or some other normal web page element that we often use to navigate. And so the commands, if you want to try this, are the letter Y, as in yellow, moves to the next Smart Glance highlight or glance highlight on the page. So the idea, we do this just like if you're moving to heading or form field or button or checkbox. So we have Y or Shift Y. Pressing Y will move you to the next glance item, and Shift plus Y will move you to the previous one. So you will also know that, notice if you're using JAWS 2023, when you load a web page, you always hear it tell you the number of headings, the number of links and regions and so on. You'll also hear it tell you now how many highlights are on the page. So that will be a really good way to know if that particular page has any glance highlights, because not all pages will. And JAWS has got a particular algorithm or series of steps that it uses to try to determine what things are visually highlighted font-wise that you might need to hear about. So some pages may have 2 or 3, some pages might have none, some pages might have 100. And so you'll hear JAWS say there are some X number of highlights on this page, if there are any, otherwise it won't say anything about it. So when you hear that, you'll know that you can now try pressing Y to jump to the next one and move through the different highlight items. I'll give you an example that I use in the US a lot. I use Amazon.com to buy a lot of things in the US because I can have it shipped directly to my home, obviously. And on the Amazon site, they use headings quite well, but often on the search pages, there are things that stand out that are not marked as headings. So there's little sections of the page. And in fact, there were sections of the page that I never even knew existed before this feature, because I don't arrow through the entire Amazon page when I go to search for something. It's too big. It'd take 20 minutes to down arrow through everything. So I would typically press H, jump through all of the different headings for the search products, but I was missing other things that were on that page that were beneath the headings that weren't ever coded as headings. So glance highlights actually let me find those things. So there were sections about how you can sell things on Amazon or other ways to contact Amazon, things like that. And so what I would suggest is when you go to pages now in 2023, start listening to what JAWS is saying about how many highlights are on the page and try it out and see if it helps you find things on there that you may not have known before, or especially if the page is not very accessible, if they didn't tag things properly, the glance highlights might help you be able to navigate around that page and find the information a little more frequently. Another example, a customer wrote us recently and told us that they were using this feature and it helped them on a form that they were filling out. There were different fields that were marked as required, but they weren't tagged so that JAWS could tell you that they were required. The field names were bolded, so someone visually could easily see that the text was required, but you didn't necessarily know that with JAWS. So the glance highlight feature helped them discover that, oh, these fields are bolded now, so that's why they're required. This feature will also work in PDF files. So if you open up PDFs in Adobe Acrobat Reader, or even if you open them up in the browser, for example, you would be able to use this feature to jump to different things in there that JAWS also believes are things that you would want to know about. And there are settings you can change with glance highlights if you decide you don't want to hear them spoken or announced when you load a page. If you don't want to hear the announcement about how many are on the page, you can go into Settings Center for your browser in JAWS, and you can turn these things off by searching for the word highlight. So there are ways you can change the sensitivity of it as well. Those are kind of more advanced features or way to shape how this functionality works. But I would also ask to give us feedback at software suggestions at Vispero.com if you start to use this and start to find it beneficial, or if you find places that you think we should be marking as glance highlights so that we could do better with it. Give us your feedback on it and we'll be sure to consider it. So that's one of the big new things in JAWS that I would encourage you to try. Another update to JAWS is that JAWS 2023 by default will now work on ARM platform devices. And basically ARM is a type of processor architecture. So that the type of processors that we've all been used to using, even if you didn't know what any of this meant, if you never heard of it, was called x86 or x64. So those are just types of processor architectures. But ARM, ARM, is a type of processor platform that has often been used only on mobile type devices. So phones, other types of devices that really need to get a lot of battery life out of them. That's typically where this has been used. But now there are computer manufacturers making laptops or tablet computers that run Windows that use the ARM platform or architecture. And JAWS is now able to run on that ARM platform. So for one example would be the new Surface Pro that Microsoft has. That kind of device runs ARM. Typically with ARM devices, you get very high battery usage, battery life out of them. So, a computer using an ARM processor may get much more higher battery life than something that's not. And so not all laptops that you buy, actually only a small percentage of them will be ARM-based devices, but the ones that are, you can now use JAWS on them. You don't have to download a separate installation package that when you install JAWS, it will recognize that you have an ARM device and it will install the right version that has that. So that's new in 2023. I will note that Zoomtext is not ready for ARM devices, and so thus Fusion could not be run on ARM devices yet since it requires Zoomtext. So that's something that is being worked on and will be announced once it's ready. Another thing that I want to mention is around a fix that was made that impacted certain Dell computers. So Dell computers over the last couple of years, they have a program that runs on them that is called Wavesmax Audio. And that program runs in the background. You don't even know it's there. It just runs. It's part of the Dell utilities. And its job is to deal with things related to your sound card. And for example, if you plug in headphones into your computer, that little program is responsible for switching the audio to come through your headphones instead of through your regular speakers. Well, we started to notice, or customers started to notice as well a couple of years ago, that when they're using Dell computers, that after using it for a few hours or all day, the computer would start to become unstable, or it would get sluggish, or the memory usage would go really, really high. And we found out what was happening, that this little application, this audio application, was causing an issue with JAWS, and that audio application ended up sucking up all the memory on the computer. So normally that little program needed, I don't know, let's say it was maybe like 5 megabytes of memory to run. Well, by the end of the day, after JAWS was talking all day long, if you're using the computer, that little program might have sucked up and used 2 gigabytes of your memory, which is 10,000 times more than what it needed. So it was actually an issue with the Dell driver application. We reached out to Dell. We could never really get them to work on it. We all know we're kind of a small fish in a big pond as far as technology goes. So we decided to try to fix it ourselves. And fortunately, we were able to do that. Our engineering team found a way to deal with this and kind of trick that little audio application to not suck up all that memory. And so with 2023, there's nothing you have to do. This is something you won't even know happened. The audio drivers now will mitigate that issue with the Dell Wavesmax Audio. So for those of you who might be using Dell computers, if you have turned off the Dell Wavesmax Audio program, then you can turn it back on now. The only way to get the symptoms to stop in the past where you actually had to disable that Wavesmax application, which would mean that when you plug in headphones, it wouldn't switch to your headphones, for example, because it was disabled. If you did disable it, you can re-enable it now if you're using 2023. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, and this is the first time you heard of it, then you might notice if you're using a Dell that you may not have stability problems that you might have had in the past, because you might have been experiencing these symptoms and never even really realized it or knew what was causing it. So this should really help a lot of folks using Dell computers, whether you actually know it or not. It's a big update that we were able to do. So that's for Dell Wavesmax Audio. An additional thing that we did is when you go to activate JAWS, if you're activating for the first time or you need to reactivate because you upgraded, in the past, you had to have administrator rights on that computer when you would go to activate JAWS or Zoomtext or Fusion for that matter. And if you work in a corporate environment or a workplace and you don't have admin rights, then you had to get somebody to log in with admin rights or to remote access into your machine to do this in order to activate JAWS. With 2023, you do not anymore need administrative rights to do the license activation. So if it was prompting you before when you would go to activate and it would say you don't have admin rights or something like that, then it won't do that anymore because it doesn't need admin rights. Now, you still need admin rights to install the program. That's something we don't have any control over. Microsoft does that. But if you are activating JAWS, Zoomtext, or Fusion, you will no longer have to have admin rights to do that. I'm going to turn it over to Roxana here now, and she's going to talk about changes to notification history or notification manager. And this is a feature I mentioned earlier that came in June of this year with JAWS 2022. And it's a great example of introducing a feature in the middle of the year, and then we'll continue to work on it. You know, we made some updates in this original 2023 release. We'll continue to make updates to it as we go forward into next year. So Roxana is going to talk about that and then also share some things around Zoomtext. So Roxana, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, the notification history that is part of JAWS was, like Ryan said, released in the latest 2022 release, and got stronger updates in the 2023 release after we got a lot of user feedback. And we want to improve more on our iterative development so that we actually get more user feedback and can define our features further onto that. So what is the notification history? The notification history, first of all, provides the users with the ability to revisit their notifications and to also adjust which notification is announced. Because over the time when Windows developed, Teams came on, Outlook, the users get more and more notifications, and with JAWS that can be really bothering because the speech interrupts you all the time and says, hey, you have a new email, hey, there's this new notification. And yeah, that really is distracting in your workflow. And we had users who requested, I want to have more control over it. And I also want to see what I missed if I didn't get it the first time it was read out. And therefore, the notification history is there to solve this user need. And you are opening it with insert space followed by N for notification. So it's one of our layered commands. And it starts with a list of your latest notifications that you missed, and you can revisit them. And also based on a notification, create then a rule that you don't want to hear it anymore. For example, if you go to the browser and you always hear the page load and the page is ready, then you can create a rule that you are just hearing maybe a small sound or nothing at all because you know your browser and internet connection is fast enough now. And as part of a release in 2023, after we heard back from users, we added 4 more parts to this notification history. And first of all, when you now visit the notification history, you can actually enter on a notification and review it. And we saw that users get notifications that are not just short, like new email, but also longer messages, and they really wanted to go through it step by step to see what they missed. And also, after we released the initial possibility to adjust rules, people asked, I want more flexibility. I want to be able to control that with defining which part of a rule I really mean. So we started with having the looking for notifications that contain a certain text part, but now in the new release, you can also define that it has to stand in the end, that it has to stand in the beginning, or also matches pattern. A matches pattern is something that gives the user full control to use regex expressions and really define it into the last bit. And I'm not going into the details on it. We have recently released a podcast in FS Cast from Glenn Gordon, who goes into these details. And that really gives you all the powers to define your notifications and improve your performance on there if you are getting a lot. And in addition, we made it easier to manage the rules by that you can now give them names if you have a lot of them. It's easier to keep the overview, but also you can clear your history if it saves for notifications for 24 hours in this history. But if you're saying like, I don't want it anymore, I want to clear it, you can clear it out now. And next, I'm coming to Zoomtext. And for Zoomtext, we also have a really new, interesting feature that is called Tethered View. And yeah, it's part of Zoomtext, but therefore also from Fusion. And why we developed this, the magnification users often struggle with keeping the overview of a desktop, like where are my information? And in addition, a lot of UI designers also spread out the information, so you can have your input in one location, but then the output is somewhere completely different. And one scenario where we now helped out with the Tethered View is for the Windows Start menu. For example, if you're typing in the Windows Start menu, your text field is in the left bottom corner, and the search result is more in the middle of the screen on the side. So even if you have a magnification from just 4x, you're already not seeing this element anymore. And what the Tethered View does in this scenario, it sees that you're in the search field and searching for something, and knows that the search results or your first suggestion is on the top. And it takes this part of the screen and moves it closer to you, so that it's directly over your edit field. This gives you the possibility that you can, first of all, see it, so you know if you did a typo and the suggestion doesn't fit anymore, you can go back and correct it. But also you can directly click on the window in the Tethered View. So you just saw a comment, sorry. Yeah, you can directly click on it and open it, and this reduces the movement you have. So you're not having to move with the magnification up there and search it yourself. You can directly stay there and click there, and that helps the user with keeping the overview. This feature is, like I said, in the Draw Start menu, but it's also available in Word for comments. So if you're in a Word document, you're collaborating with other people, and you want to, you see that there's a comment and you want to quickly just see what is this comment about? Do I have to revisit it? Do I have to do something with it? It also shows the comment directly in your view next to your text cursor where you are. And the last situation where we have it implemented is in Excel. And there we saw that you have the different cells with, for example, a number. There's the number 100, but this number is generated with a formula that is hidden behind it. And this formula is always placed quite high up in the UI. So you cannot get both parts on the screen together. Therefore, with a Tethered View, as soon as there's a formula, you are getting it into your view and can directly access it and view it, so that you know, okay, this number is based on this formula.
And we're going to be able to add this in other places, right, Roxana? So you would think, as we find other areas where Tethered View might be useful to people, we can add those in.
Exactly right. We can add it for more scenarios, but also for trainers. We talked about this feature before we released it, even to trainers and to teachers. And they said, yeah, this is great. And I see that all the time, but also in this third-party program and this third-party program. So therefore, it's also scriptable. And that even, with the JAWS scripting language that combines, that gives you the possibility in Fusion to now also control this Zoomtext feature with JAWS scripting. But like Ryan said, we also are looking for more opportunities to extend where we can use the Tethered View to directly support the user.
So if any of you are using Zoomtext or Fusion and you find places where you think this would be beneficial, it's a certain application or scenario that you encounter, let us know and we can see that's something that we can put in to have Tethered View available there.
Exactly. And that's also all on my side. And Ryan, if we don't have anything more to add, then I would say we are opening the floor for questions.
Yeah, I think, well, there's two things I want to mention just briefly, and then we'd love to have time for questions. One is it's really a really good way to review all of the what's new information when we have a release is on the freedomscientific.com webpage. If you go to freedomscientific.com, there's a heading there called software releases. And that's under that heading is where we always put the links for the what's new, whether it's the full version release or one of the updates that we do throughout the year. That's where you'll always find the latest info. And so in the what's new page, there's one for JAWS, there's one for Fusion, and there's one for Zoomtext. And on those pages, you'll find the real details, good details about the different features. So explanations and even screenshots regarding Tethered View that Roxana was just mentioning, or a description of Smart Glance and the keystrokes available for Smart Glance, like Y or Shift Y or Control Insert Y to bring up a list of glance items. You'll find details around the ARM support and the fix that we made for the Dell computers. And so that's a really good place to go reference the different things that are happening. And then also FSCast. Roxana mentioned that. That's another place. Glenn Gordon, who does the FSCast, he always does some in the fall about new features. So he and I did one back at the end of August around some of these new features. And then the one for October that was released last week, he talks about the notification history and some of the new things you can do there, and even guides you through the process of how to create some of those more advanced notification rules. And so those are just two resources I would recommend. And also our training webpage. Our team in the US does quite a bit of training. They do webinars, they do YouTube videos. You can get them through the websites, you can get them through smart home devices like an Echo. And so freedomscientific.com/training is their homepage as well. So if you haven't ever looked at it before, that's another place that I would go and explore what's available to you. And one other thing I want to mention, someone might have referenced it in a chat message I saw earlier. I mentioned earlier that companies like Microsoft and Google are putting out updates to their products at a high rate of speed, every week, every 2 weeks, and so on. The good thing is, if they're trying to fix an accessibility issue that they've discovered or we've discovered and reported to them, they can get that fix out pretty quickly. The bad thing is when you release updates at a high rate of speed, there's more chance that the update could possibly break something. And so that happened a few weeks ago with Google Chrome. And some of you probably experienced this. I know we got a lot of calls in our help desk and emails about this, where if you were using Chrome and you would press spacebar or enter on certain elements in Chrome, it would bring up the context menu, which would have things like go back or go forward or copy, or it's the same as if you were to right click with the mouse button on that item. And normally you'd go and you'd press enter on something, and all of a sudden now it's acting differently. And literally just one day you'd wake up and it would start doing this, and you've done it the same way for the last 5 years, and now all of a sudden it stops working. This in particular was also happening in Gmail. And so as soon as we investigated, we found that Chrome had made an update that broke this or for JAWS. And it didn't happen necessarily in NVDA or Windows Narrator because there's just slight nuances in the way the technologies work. But Chrome made a change that broke this. And so we contacted Chrome immediately, or Google contacted them immediately, told them what was happening, that this was impacting all of our users who use Chrome. They realized that it was a change that they had made, that a bug got introduced. And so they changed it within a matter of a few days and then pushed an update out within a week or so, week or 2 weeks of when we first reported it. It was also, the issue started happening in Edge, Microsoft Edge, because Edge uses Chrome's web page engine. So Edge, even though it's Microsoft, is actually using Chromium inside. So then this issue started showing up there because it got copied over from Chrome, basically. So then we worked with Microsoft that, hey, Google made this fix. Can you guys implement the fix in Edge so that our customers stop having this issue? And Microsoft worked on that really quickly as well. So it was one of those examples of, unfortunately, things can break like that with the nature of free updates. But it was also a really good example of how companies can work together to solve problems. Google didn't say, hey, we don't care about JAWS users. We'll fix it whenever we get around to it. They said, yep, we realize it's our issue. We'll fix it immediately. And they got a patch updated. Microsoft recognized the same thing. So it's a great partnership story, but it is one of those things that can happen. So I suspect many of you may have noticed this or may have kind of noticed weird behavior and didn't even know why, but that's what happened. So if you're still having that issue by chance, you would just need to update Chrome or Edge to the latest version as well. So let's take some time now for questions.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. And Roxana, great presentation, loads of things to talk and think about. I think loads of things have been happening in chat, and we'll ask Sharon to have a look at that in a moment. I just want to, we have about 20 minutes left, so we would welcome your questions. But just before that, I'm going to ask Carl from our sales team in Northampton just to very briefly talk to us about purchasing, whether it's an upgrade or an SMA, or if you're not on the latest version and after today you want to do so. Carl might be just able to give us a bit of information on how you can do that.
Certainly can. Good afternoon all. I'm just putting in the chat our email address, UK contact number, and the Irish direct dial if you'd like to use that one. Obviously everyone's aware that there are 3 different upgrade types: 1-step, 2-step, or a 3-step, which covers anything 3 and over. At the minute, there aren't any specific discounts available, but that doesn't mean that if you give us a call or drop us an email that we won't offer you a cheeky little 10% just to say thank you for your custom. Prices are varying for your SMA in sterling from 160 and euro 192. 1-step's 158, 2-step 260, and 3-step 395. These are all JAWS home. I haven't got the Zoomtext pricing because in my infinite wisdom I only wrote JAWS down. To be fair, it's not much different. I think it's 165 for Zoomtext magnifier and 185 for an SMA for mag reader off the top of my head. But as I say, the information's all in the chat box there, so if you do need to get in touch, please feel free, even if it's just for pricing, or if you have any technical issues with installing the latest version, we can then direct you on to one of our tech support, so I won't take up too much time.
Thanks, Carl. Great, as always, great information, and people can get in touch with Carl and the team in Northampton if you'd like to have a conversation about that. And he did mention cheeky 10%. You never know what you'll get.
Hey, that's a good deal.
That's a great deal.
I'd call in for that.
But Carl's a good guy. He looks after people. Right. We will go to raised hands in a sec. I just want to, and we go to Sharon to look at chat. One that came into me directly by email from Phil Daniels, who said he's been having problems since upgrading to 2023 using the Alt and Control keys with the arrow keys to navigate tables. And he was wondering, is there a known issue? Ryan, I don't know if there's anything you can comment on that. I have not seen that issue, but that doesn't mean to say it's not.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's not a global issue. We would have seen it ourselves or heard about it. Could be something in a particular table that you're using, Phil. If you could let us know either via Sight and Sound, or if you could email us directly. In fact, I'll give you my email address if you want. And Stuart, if anybody wants to put it in the chat, that's fine. But my email address is rjones@vispero.com. If you're experiencing that on a particular web page, let me know so that we could take a look. Because certainly if there's something we need to fix, we'll be happy to do it. But it's not a global issue that we're seeing, but maybe something specific to a site that you're using. And please tell us what that is.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Ryan. Carl has put Ryan's email address in the chat as well. And Phil, if you want to get in touch with us or with Ryan directly, see can we resolve that. I see one or two raised hands. We will come back to those in a sec. But someone who can summarize chat like no other is Sharon Lyons. So Sharon, how has chat been? I think it's been quite busy.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Yeah, just there was a couple of comments about the Dell, that they were very pleased to hear that Dell is improving, and someone saying that they were used. Here it is. So Michael Hughes says, great to hear that the Dell is because he's been having problems. So good to hear about the new fix. And Wakas Chowdhury says that his XPS 13 works just fine, but with Bluetooth headphones he has to unload and reload JAWS, and because it starts getting sluggish. I don't know, maybe the Dell improvements will help that.
It's possible,
yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
John O'Donoghue was saying the problem with the space bar, he had to change it over to Firefox. He was getting the Alt button to the right. I think it's that context menu thing.
I think it's the context menu issue. I believe so, yes.
So hopefully, John, if you update your Chrome or Edge, whichever one you're using, that will hopefully solve that. Then there was a couple of questions that we get sometimes that people ask, does JAWS work on Android? Michael Capocci asked that, and Mark Smith was asking if it works on a Chromebook. And I usually say no, it's only on Windows, but I thought I'd better just ask because you said about the ARM support and everything.
And so JAWS does only work on Windows. Now,
for now,
you can use it if you use a Mac, you can't run JAWS in the Mac operating system, but Macs, for example, can run Windows through a kind of a secondary program called Parallels. The new MacBooks can do that. So you can run Windows in that environment, but the prerequisite is that it has to be Windows. So you won't be able to run JAWS directly on a Chromebook. But anything that if you can get Windows on it, then you should be able to get JAWS on it as well.
Great, thanks for that, Ryan. And Paula Hardy wants to know everything about Fusion because she's going to teach a student soon. And could she have a demo code? I'm sure if you speak to Carl, we could sort that out. Carl's giving me a funny look. So yeah, just
one for Carl,
bring Carl.
And there are, can I just mention the training website, freedomscientific.com/training. There's actually a section there for teachers. So if you're someone who's either a teacher or a trainer, there's some content there that's kind of geared around teaching these products. And so that's a place that I would go take a look at. And our team has a pretty strong emphasis on teachers and trainers right now. So there's only going to be more things added into that section as we go into the next year.
And they're in various different formats as well. They're not just audio. You can get kind of transcripts and
there's transcript, there's videos. I mean, the way that we consume training now is a lot different than it was in the past. We've always had the DAISY books that are available within JAWS, but we're doing a lot of training now that's in short little segments, so very topical based. Instead of reading a 3,500 page manual, we'll break it up into small little sections. And so you'll find YouTube videos, you'll find just audio tutorials, and it's a variety of ways to consume the training.
whichever way works for you.
And I just see, sorry,
Yep.
Sharon, I see
Yep.
one of our colleagues, Nathan in tech support, has just put up a message that support can provide a demo license, and he's helpfully given the email address for tech support. So Paula, if you get in
Brilliant.
touch with Nathan in tech support, those guys will sort you out.
Thanks, Nathan. And then also Chris Lewis was saying on Windows 11 that his insert spacebar plus letters is not working. Any ideas? So your layered.
The layered
keyboard.
commands.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something you may want to check with support about, Chris. There's probably something nuanced going there. So maybe worth checking with the team about. I don't know of anything off the top of my head that might be causing that.
Check all your updates, maybe. I don't know. It's the first thing I do.
Yeah.
I think that's it for now.
We just had one message, Sharon, that I was just browsing the chat while you were talking, and I think Roxana may wish to comment, because somebody has suggested that Roxana should be a speech engine.
Yes.
So, Roxana, would you like to answer that? Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. But it's a really good guess. Like, I'm from Münster, so pretty close to Hanover. Like, I was quite impressed by that comment.
Oh, wow.
Someone was guessing her accent regionally, not just that it's German, but actually a region in German. That's
I will be
impressive.
passing through Münster next week. I'm going to Germany. That's interesting. Wow. So there you go. We could have a speech engine in the next version of JAWS.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Roxana's pretty busy. I don't know if I can have time to record everything, but let's see.
One other question, actually, and I was thinking this the other day. How do you disable the kind of quicker access bar that comes up? It's very useful when it came in, and then it just started getting in my way. So I wanted to know the option to actually remove it.
Yeah, and therefore there's like this arrow where you can extend it, go to the settings and preferences, and then deactivate it, so that you then can only reach it with caps lock and right click. I had a short video on that for the not CSUN but for Side City, but otherwise I can guide you through that.
Okay.
Okay.
I just couldn't get it to work. I tried kind of doing the X and then saving the settings in Zoomtext, but it kept coming back.
Yeah, like
So
extend it first, go to the settings, and if you cannot not find it, please reach out, and then I can guide you to further instructions.
Great. I'll check that and maybe have a look on your teaching things as well.
Roxana, is it safe to say when you click the X on that, it just closes it for that session, but then when you start Zoomtext back, it's going to come back, because it was designed, if you just quickly wanted to close it temporarily, but then it would come back and unless you change it via the preferences.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
Roxana, and thank you, Sharon,
Yep.
for summarizing that chat as so well as you always do. I have a couple of hands raised, and we have about 10 minutes, so I want to just give these guys a chance to ask their questions. So we have Rosie and we have Parish. So we'll go to Rosie first. So Rosie, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello,
Yeah.
hi.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. I wasn't aware, I didn't know what the different step 1, step 2, step 3 were. And also Windows on a Mac, because I'm looking to buy a laptop. Does JAWS run as well on a Mac as it does a standard Windows computer?
So for that part of the first part of the question, I may need you to expand a little bit. When you said step 1, step 2, I'm not sure unless somebody else knows what you meant.
I think it's in relation to the upgrades.
It was,
Ryan,
yes.
We might ask Carl. We might go back to Carl for that bit, because it's
Yeah.
probably more local pricing. But yeah.
Okay. So for the Mac, so the way that it would work is that when you have a Mac, you have to have an application called Parallels, which does have a cost to it. I believe it's something you can download and install, and then you can install Windows from that environment, and then you can install JAWS.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the same as running it on a regular PC? No, but it's still doable. But even just for example, on a Mac, the keyboard is different than on a regular PC. You don't have an insert key. You don't have an alt key. You have an options key and a command key. So some of the keyboard combinations are kind of different there, the way that the keyboard maps. So I wouldn't say that it's the same. but I
Right.
would say that it is something that is doable and it is learnable.
Right. Okay. And as efficient?
That's probably too subjective for me to say. I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, it really kind of depends on how much you use it. I will say that I have used it some, but I don't use it every day by any stretch.
Yeah.
And so I think there's quite a few people I know who do use it, but a lot of them are just using it for testing, and then they're going back to a Windows PC to do their main thing. So
Right. Okay.
it's hard for me to say if it's going to be completely as efficient. It's kind of going to just be as much as you want to invest time in it and doing
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Carl, do you want to just mention the upgrades, the steps?
Yeah, I do. Sorry about that. I should have been clearer. Basically, the way Freedom work with their upgrades is you get a 1-year upgrade. So if you're on version 2022 with the release of version 2023, you'd have a 1-step. Then if you're on 21 to 23, 2-step, and then so on. And it just works that way. That's why there's a different pricing structure for different upgrades.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's
You're
mainly
welcome.
if you want to buy an upgrade for kind of like a yearly subscription almost. Like if I'm paying for Amazon Prime or something, I pay a yearly fee, versus if you want to buy 2 of them at once, you're going to have the next 2 years of upgrades, but you have to pay more because you're buying 2 years at a time. So it's that idea. And obviously for each version that you have, you will be included to get all the updates that come out for that version. So 2023 came out last week. We're going to have an update coming out for that in December. There'll be another one probably in February, and then an April update, and probably a July, and then probably one more after that. So you will already get all of those updates, which will have new features sometimes. You'll get all of them when you purchase, whether you buy a yearly or every 2-year subscription, you get all the updates as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks a million. Right, I'm going to go to Parish, because Parish had her hand raised for quite a while. So Parish, you should be able to unmute yourself. I think we have you.
Hi, thanks for this brilliant presentation. Looking forward to upgrading my Zoomtext version. I've been using Zoomtext since it was launched, or can't even remember, 20 years ago. So one of the things, this is more of a software suggestion. Something that I would really like to see in future versions is a line view, like an auto cue. So the eyes are not as good as what used to be. And when you got paragraphs and paragraphs that you need to read aloud, I really struggle. So if there was an option of, kind of having like an auto cue, and I can just move words by words or a few words at a time and just scroll through the screen without having any more other text on the screen. So if this can be taken on board for maybe future releases, that would be really good.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good idea. I'll ask Roxana, maybe if you can make a note of that, then yeah, let's definitely look into it.
Yeah, I got the first one, the line view. What did you say with the graphs? Like the second suggestion.
So yeah, basically, instead of having all the text on the screen at one time, so I can just have a single line being displayed on the screen at any one point, and like an auto cue. So, you can just move word by word, or just a single line scrolling through from left to right, and I can just read through that.
Yeah,
especially for huge documentation that you need to read through line by line. So this is visual reading rather than using a screen reader to read.
Okay, thank you, Parish. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just see a message in the chat from Jackie Brown, who's reminding us that just to mention that there's also a training podcast from the Freedom Scientific Training Department. It's well worth listening to. So that's definitely also good to mention. That is all our raised hands, and I think, Sharon, unless there's anything earth-shattering in the chat that you want to bring to our attention.
A earth-shattering.
Well,
I'm not sure.
anything-
That's a big ask.
Sorry,
Stuart.
that's a very sorry.
Earth-shattering.
Sorry, I think I meant to say important. Sorry.
I think well, someone mentioned about Opera, the Opera browser, and Nathan was saying I don't believe the Opera browser is fully supported by JAWS, but perhaps Ryan can confirm for us.
Yeah, it's not something that we support in JAWS. I'm not sure if you can use it. That's not to say it wouldn't be usable, but it's definitely not something that we're testing with and supporting on a regular basis. So we certainly support Chrome and Edge, and if anyone's still using Internet Explorer, then that's still usable, but Chrome and Edge are clearly going to have the most accessibility support as well. And part of the whole picture of this is not only what can JAWS do, but really what does the browser do? If the browser doesn't send the right accessibility information so that JAWS or any screen reader for that matter can see it, then we can't say it. And so there's kind of a two-way street involved here with accessibility in browsers, and unquestionably Chrome and Edge provide the best information for us.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I neglected to mention Firefox. We do support Firefox.
Brilliant.
Firefox. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're just a minute to 3, so we got through everything in the hour. Thank you so much to Ryan and Roxana, of course, and of course Jan as well, who had to duck out, I think, during the session. But thank you to our colleagues for joining us from Vispero. Thanks, of course, to Sharon Lyons and Carl Brayley, as always. And thank you to all of you for attending and for your engagement over the last hour or so. This webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, certainly by tomorrow. So that's it from Stuart Lawler and everybody at Sight and Sound, and from our friends at Vispero. We'll talk to you all soon, and bye for now.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Stuart. Bye, all.